there, I'm Avon, or Nails That Glow, depending on how you know me, and this is First Drafts That Glow, a flash fiction short story writing project where I cold read my first draft stories that I write in one sitting. Pretty great, right? Now, last week's story I thought was really good. I actually have some more ideas for that one, and if you've been listening, the For Trust and Change, the one about the four cats in a spaceship. The horror one that you heard last week, I don't know where that was coming from. I don't know. But I'm sure you've noticed I'm jumping genres, and I'm trying to jump writing styles a little bit. I like first person somewhat, but third person kind of works too. I mean, it's just whatever actually starts happening when I start writing. But today, we're going to be venturing into the realm of fantasy. We're going to be hanging out with wizards and orcs and having a trippy time with it or something. I have absolutely no idea because I can't remember what I wrote in this story. Also, I was trying to do something with my hair and it just failed. So if you have any tips on how to deal with spaghetti hair, you shoot them my way. I don't know if I'm going to grow it super long or if I'm going to go back short or something, but a gal could really use some tips. Anyways, what else? So, like and subscribe, tell your friends about this show. If enough people, start listening and everything like that, I might be able to do these more often. It would also afford me time to write more detailed stories, which I'm very much interested in doing. This is fun for me. It's also quite challenging. Very challenging. Very cool. Very cool. Very challenging. So I guess I should start reading because I have a habit of making these intros just kind of meander on forever and ever and ever and ever. And my green screen today, I've tried my freaking darndest to get it to be completely flat. And let me tell you something. It is hard. And I even looked up some like tips, and I steamed it, and I did all the, all the things, and none of it works. So if I'm still having some stuff here or like right up here, I'm sorry. And like, as you can see, I can't really get too far from my screen. So if you see the shadow there, that's why. It also, that would be another benefit if enough people listen to this show and I got some sponsors or something like that. I could afford a studio space to go and like, make it really kind of flash. I mean, go watch my first season. my personal space was effectively a studio. I just decorated it with like figures and I don't know. I tried all sorts of different stuff, but I kind of like this. I don't know what the art card for this show is going to look like. I wait till after I read it to figure it out. But I hope it's cool. I hope you like it. So, before I start, you can visit me at nailsthatglow.com. There are links to literally everything I do online, subjects of my past, and I keep a nightly blog about my transition in sobriety. And there's a daily selfie in there so you can see my cute mug all the time. And I don't put any filters on them because I'm already perfect. I'm also really freaking humble. I mean, I'm so humble. Let's see. I don't know. I lost it just as I said it because, I need to stop. So anyways, I guess I should start the show. Let's see, where else to go? First, at First Drafts That Glow, for YouTube. You can email the show at firstdraftsthatglow@gmail.com. And, if you have any ideas or anything like that, or if you want to be a guest on my irregular podcast, Abstractions That Glow, holler at your cat, because I might be into that. I don't know. Who knows? All right, I've talked way too long, and the glasses are now on. So we're going to read, what is it again? Shallow Reason, a First Drafts That Glow story by me, Avon. All right, you ready? You ready? Okay. Again, I have no idea why I do that. All right, Shallow Reason. I'm thinking maybe I should look more at the screen so you're not always looking at my profile. Because, gosh, look at how cute I am. Okay, sorry. I should start reading. As I actively move the light so I don't keep putting a shadow right in my face. All right, here we go. Being called by the wizard of the land was rare. So rare, Burr only knew of a story his mother told him about when she was a small girl. The wizards never spoke directly to people that did not practice magic. They were afraid of being killed or manipulated by magical items an ignorant mundane might have brought to them. Burr remembered having to subdue a poor man that purchased a coin he was told would give him magical power if he put it on his chest. It gave him a power, all right. The coin was a portal for a necromancer to use the poor guy as a puppet. The corpse wandered around town trying to find a way into the wizard's keep. Burr was woken by his necklace that night. The urgency and sense of death magic got him out of the tower faster than most emergencies. Necromancer magic had a nasty habit of hanging around and seeping into the hundreds of the dead rodents or corpses in the graveyard. It was best he tended to it fast. Unlike the illusion and entropy magics, necro work was like a blood stain on a new linen shirt, nearly impossible to get rid of. The coin was a unique item as well. Burr's wards kept him from the reach of the caster on the other end, but he still felt the sour taste of death in his mouth as the wisps of green and blue smoke tried to envelop his head and arms. The coin damaged his gauntlet, forcing him to call one of the wizard's shadows to take it for repair. First time he ever needed one of his enchanted tools. Okay, see, this is cold reading and also first draft. This sentence, it got a little messed up. So, first time he ever needed one of his enchanted tools fixed. I don't know. I'm trying to say something like he never needed to do this before. All right. Words. Burr was asked to arrive at the main hall of the keep in his newest and plainest clothing. No jewelry, no scents would be tolerated, and he was not to eat the night before. He was instructed to even wear thin leather slippers, the shadow delivering the message brought him. The slippers were not nearly thick enough to cushion his feet on the rough cobblestone paths of the city. Worse, how porous they were as he stepped on patches of damp moss and pooled fluid he kept hoping was just water. The gate to the grounds of the keep was clean and brilliant gold. was clean and lined with brilliant gold and steel. Burr often wondered if there was a spell that kept the massive entry clean, or if it was the shadows. Taking a deep breath, he reaches out his hand to touch the door, in the only space squared off with no decoration. The shapes and sigils felt alive in how detailed they were. This caused Burr to pause as he nearly touched the panel space. The worm head looking down at the space seemed like it might be breathing. Closing his eyes and slamming his hand on the panel, he feels a slight rush of wind. His nose fills with a sweet smell and the sound of a waterfall. His eyes open slowly to see a chamber the size of the city's market. The edges of the massive circle lined in doors and hallways, some with lights behind and deep within. Few of them so dark in the dim light, he felt they were eating all illumination. Just as he was about to take a step, a shadow rushed in front of him. Stand without movement and without words until instructed. The shade said the way it communicated. The shade said if the way it communicated with Burr. Shade said if the shade said if the way it communicated with Burr were words. It was knowledge in Burr's mind. He just knew that He just knew that is what the shadow was expressing. Cold reading, folks. Cold reading. It was the most unnerving thing he had to get used to with this job. It was the same with his necklace, but with that it had more of a friendly way of communication. Nodding, Burr asks with a thought if he could sit and meditate. Getting a positive reply before the shadow dissipated, Burr sits. Stand, my lad, and come sit at the table. A strong, deep, feminine voice raises Burr out of his meditation. Burr opens his eyes to see he is sitting next to a large round table with large cushioned chairs, a fireplace somewhere on the other side, and small goblins, and he thinks half-orcs fussing over cleaning details and bringing in plates of food. Burr walks to the closest chair and sits. Across from him is who he assumes is the wizard. Never having met the magic user before, he was not sure what to expect. Seeing the androgynous person wearing purple and red with shiny black hair and silver nails was not even close to any of his guesses. Greetings, wizard. Call me Vira, and please, only use them or they. They started to pick a small pie off a plate. Would you like this chicken pie? Perhaps a beef stew, or this wonderful stuff I just discovered. It's called curry, I think. I'll try this curry if you recommend it. Burr tried to sound comfortable and casual. The wizard was beautiful. He expected some old person with low energy and pretension, not this youthful person. Oh yes, there is yellow one with a veggie cube that is spectacular. Motioning to one of the half-orcs standing near a door. Go get this man some of that yellow curry and some of the bread with the garlic on it. Now, okay, I suppose you're wondering why I called you here. Without looking up, the wizard continues to fuss over the chicken pie, taking small bites with a 3-pronged fork. Yes, Burr said. I understand you have not called anyone here in 40 or 50 years. Has it been that long? Looking up, the wizard's eyes glinted in the light as they looked to one of the goblins. It runs off, coming back with a ledger. Flipping through the pages, the wizard looks up occasionally, says a few numbers before looking back down. Ah, yes, they exclaim. That was on my 20th year here. Burr hesitates to ask the question. He is thinking, and tries to form another thing to say. Well, I am 180 years old in the years of your calendar, they say clearly. Burr blinks, not knowing if he had actually said anything or not. No, I can read your mind, they offer. I have to know how, Burr says with a bit more... I have to know how, Burr says with a bit more hostility than he intended. Well, you've been attuned to the items I made for you for so long that I can see in your heart and mind without really trying. They look directly at Burr with silver eyes, giving a smirk between small bites of pie. Realizing his thoughts have been available to the wizard since he arrived, he blushes. Please forgive my... You're good. Never thought of myself as beautiful before. It is appreciated. I do not meet many people that are not orcs or goblins. You would be surprised how many of us wizards are just simply asexual. A compliment in my circle is often about our work and not our appearance. Relaxing, Burr begins to worry about his thoughts and the chaotic nature of how his mind wanders and the involuntary thoughts and images that pop up in his head every day. I apologize for anything that shows in my head. My practice of meditation and attunement to the items you provided me does keep my mind more focused than others, but I still, waving their hand in the air, think nothing of it. These half-orcs think of little more than sex and service. They have a more vibrant sex life than most humans. Another smile before attending to a large stein, draining it and tapping the table, announcing a need for a refill. One of the orcs places a large platter and a dish with utensils in front of Burr. On the other side, a goblin sets a stein down and fills it with red wine, as another sets down a glazed mug with water. The wizard signals Burr to eat. After a time in silence, both of them eating, Burr relaxes more and takes in the room. The walls were plated with marble and patterns allowing some of the stone brickwork to show between. There was a large dome ceiling with a chandelier holding glowing orbs of red and orange lights. The space around the table had rings inlaid in the floor of gold. Silver, and material that faintly cast a green glow. Symbols and shapes he knew from his own tools mixed in with symbols he had never seen carved into some of the metal and glowing parts as well as the stone. I suppose you'd like to know why you are here, Sir Burr? The wizard said, propping their feet on the table, leaning back in their chair. Changing his slouch and putting his shoulders back as if he was standing at attention. Yes, I'm sorry, I forgot. I was curious why you would need to speak to me. Best I could guess was the nature of the repair of my gauntlet. Got it in one, they say. I was curious about some finer details the shadows could not answer, and I could not divine without you being closer. Standing, the wizard begins to walk around the table to Burr. In fact, because of the contact between us, I'm unable to get this information without your permission. While I can read what you think about now, I'm unable to read what you thought. I'm unable to read what you thought in previous days. Burr had recalled the contract, the goblin in shadow explaining all the details, benefits, and drawbacks. He leapt at the opportunity to serve the wizard and wield the items that they had described. I have little objection, but do you wish to clarify if it is required? Ah, you remember what might happen if I do this. The wizard stops to sit in a chair near him. That only happens if you've been harmed or infected by darker magics or malicious cantrips. I had the shades check you in the entrance hall to make sure you were clear. Still, Burr said, I'd be happy to recount the experience in detail, answer any questions. I have exceptional ability to recall minor details. The smile and charm in the wizard's face dimmed. As you say, there are things that the shadows were even confused by, and I fear your mind may have been made to forget some of the details. Burr shifts uncomfortably in his chair. It took me nearly a decade to get used to the shadows and necklace in my head. They were only telling me things. For you to dig in my mind is another thing. As you say, the wizard stands. Please stay in my keep while you consider my request. It has been a long time since any of the magical items in any of our arsenals have been damaged. I'm curious of the creature that crafted this coin, and how you were not affected by it at all. It did make me taste decay, and what I expected death to taste like. Also, I've just thought the items protected me. Interesting. Moving to touch Burr's chin. Well, you are a beautiful man. I would do nothing to harm you, but you will remain here until I am satisfied I have the details I need, by your words or my method. Burr smiles, nodding with the wizard's fingers under his chin. Yes, we can talk any time you like. You'll be taken to the floor I reserve for guests. There is a small staff, a room for bathing and grooming, and a small dining space and a balcony. There's also a library and materials to write as well as art supplies if you need other distractions. You will be limited to that floor for the rest of your stay. You will be brought here by one of the goblins. If you leave that floor without permission, I will be quite upset with you. Burr nods again. Did you wish to talk before nightfall? No. I must prepare a few things for my interview tomorrow. I would like you to be rested. The wizard motions to a goblin. This is Stephen. He'll be your personal attendant the rest of your stay. He understands common tongue and will be your relay to the staff for your needs. He will also be in a room cold reading. He will also be in a room next to yours, but that's why we're here. The goblin reaches to shake Burr's hand. They shake and the goblin chatters and chirps. Inside Burr's head, he understands Steve said, "Please follow me and do keep up." Burr had never spent any time in proximity. Why are you going? In proximity with goblins. Few of them worked in the market and some on the docks. He was always amazed at how fast and elegant they would move around coworkers and obstacles, the chatter of their language sounding almost like music, unlike the elven language which sounded guttural and needlessly throaty. When shown his space, he was amazed. It felt like it was the size of the town square if he combined all of the space. The bedroom was as big as his entire home, as his entire home in the tower, where the room for bathing had spouts for water inside. Steve demonstrated how they worked before moving to the library and the eating spaces. Burr was also directed to a small stage with a variety of instruments resting in cushions and stands. Clapping his hands, Steve chatters he would like reading music. What? Clapping his hands, Steve chatters he would like music. I don't know what I'm saying there. The lute and two flutes rose off the floor and began playing lightly. He then clapped his hands again and they lowered softly before falling silent. Listening to music. That's probably it. After a bath, some stargazing on the balcony, and a hearty amount of wine and cheese, Burr wrapped himself in the impossibly soft bed. The goblin already expected the need for water. He noticed as a glazed pitcher and a mug were on the nightstand. He sipped some water and turned the dial on the lamp until it went dark. He woke in a field, the grass black, and the sky an ocean green. The wind smelled of rotting meat you may find in the woods, his skin on fire from agonizing pinches all over his body. Trying to move to relieve himself of the pain and look down was impossible. He was stuck standing with his arms stretched out to the sides, his head held slightly up. He recalls the chant, the first chant required of him to learn for his role as the hand of the wizard, the chant of clear mind and body. It was a multi-purpose cantrip that would ward against dark magics and bring clarity of thought when dealing with illusion. The sky began to look like a restless ocean in a storm. The smell of death increased as the fire on his body became impossible for him to process. His voice softly chanting as he kept the words in his mind, fighting to focus on the words and on how they were said, the pace and the pattern, the cantrip, the words. All of the pain, the smell, and dark fury of the sky faded into a soft gray space. He felt able to move again. He felt a sharp pain in his chest that shot to his right hand. He saw the gauntlet grasping the cursed coin, but he saw the gauntlet and him grasping the cursed coin before the image of the gauntlet dissolved into smoke, showing his bare arm. The sharp pain vanishing as the chant kept running in his mind. A green field with a clear blue sky became I said clear again in that sentence. A green field with a blue sky became clear through the mist around him. Flowers and sweetgrass smells filled his nose, and a cool breeze wrapped itself over his bare skin. In this dreamscape, Burr sits and begins to chant another cantrip, light and joy. This was not the first nightmare from an encounter of such evil as the necromancer's coin. The realm of magic was just confusing the first few years. He thought he might go insane until one day he simply had no more fear. His mother told him that is why he was chosen, because he was a fighter and he had a good heart. The morning and day following was uneventful for him. Steve refused to answer anything about the wizard. Burr spent the day browsing the library and asking the instruments to play music from distant lands that were calming. He cast a cantrip on himself to memorize some of the music. He wanted to play some of it for his family on his harpsichord. That night, he asked the kitchen staff to eat with him. A few half-orcs and goblins joined him for a night of games and trading stories. Steve was more amusing when he got a few drinks in him. The chef told a story of his family meeting a dragon merchant in his village. Chef said it was rare for a dragon that walked as men and orcs to be a merchant. Chef's village was a diverse place of humans, orcs, and even a few elven folk. The dragon tried selling a potion that would enhance sexual pleasure for all. He was run out of town for selling a bogweed that was used as a drug by elven folk. When one of the elves caught a whiff of the draught, he told the orc chief of the town. The chief destroyed the wagon, the dragon was selling out of, and confiscated the horses. He punched the dragon once, and it ran off like a startled rabbit. Burr had trouble following some of the slang the half-orc used, but was still amused that a man-sized dragon had the courage to try to sell drugs in an orc-run city. He laughed to himself when he thought of the dragon's tail being covered in shit and piss as it ran off. After the dining hall clock struck midnight, Burr excused himself and thanked all of the orcs and goblins for a fun evening. He decided he liked goblins more than ever now. How delightful and pleasant they were once you could understand the chattering. And he always liked orcs. He even dated one named Stone, a rather buff hunter that had come through town recently with his mate. Burr remembered having to pop his shoulder back and join after that night. He was thankful there was a potion in his supplies to help with the healing. He wondered when he would see those two again. That night, he decided to draw sigils over and under his bed. He activated them before placing a ring of ash on his forehead, connecting him to the sigils. Falling asleep was often harder when there was the barely noticeable hum of magic. It was just out of reach of the ear, but still there. Enough to make you think you were hearing music or words that were just out of range. One of the many things he had trouble getting used to and could never explain to those that were not trained in such things. He missed his necklace. It would often help suppress those noises in his home. That space being covered in active and passive sigils and spells and cantrips, all out of necessity. It had been so long since he had to even try to sleep without it. When sleep did find him, it felt wrong. There was an awareness of being in a physically rested state. His essence and mind were far too active. There was an energy he could not account for. As he focused on the sensation, he recognized the feeling of projecting his essence into the ether of the glimmer realm. The realm he only visited when he was seeking advice from the wizard, and only with great concentration. He tried to connect back to his body and felt a slight static pop each time he tried. A slower attempt popped him deeper into the realm. Assuming he got here because of his sigil somehow, he decided to enjoy the shifting world around him. The sparkles and shimmers of colors as they danced and rippled. Folding in space, creating shapes and movements his mind could not track. The sound of music discordant and peaceful all at the same time. Arriving with smells and thoughts. He felt he might as well create a still place for himself until he could get back. Time, folding on itself in very visible ways outside of his stillness, began to focus into the shape and sound he recognized as the wizard. "What are you doing here?" the object asked. "I have no idea," his words leaving his mind and mouth in the form of a smell and shapes inching towards the wizard. "This is a curious occurrence," the shape folds into itself before blooming again. "I thought this might happen. Did you have a nightmare last night?" "Yes, I did." "You will come to meet with me in the morning, after you eat breakfast." The shape fades in time, leaving behind the smell of being rushed. The next morning, Burr woke with the lingering effects of the glimmer realm in his mind's eye. Steve seemed to understand immediately what Burr was going through and held his nose as he served breakfast. The rest of the staff all said hi before running off holding their ears and noses. In the room with the large table, the wizard was lounging in their chairs, sipping from a golden goblet. They had a shirt open down the middle, showing a hint of breast. Burr noticed a mustache he swears was not there 2 days ago. The wizard's hair was in a high ponytail, showing ears with a number of silver rings and some studs. They motioned for Burr to sit near them. "I have some good and bad news, young man," they say with more husk than previous. Burr waits for them to continue. Begins to feel awkward and then starts to ask what the news is. The wizard nearly yells as the thought comes, "We're going to have to get you cleaned better. You smell of dung and troll spit." "I'm sorry," looking over his body, not smelling anything. It must be from being forced into the glimmer. I normally prepare with oils before. I thought it would just dissipate." "This will not do." The wizard jumps up. "We will do this tomorrow," and vanishes with a gust of leaves and petals. Looking around, Burr notices Steve is gone as well as half the orcs, and the walls as well as half the orcs, and the walls have become smooth with no openings or hallways. The table filled with food and drink, as well as the fireplace normal. The floor darker, and the lighting above cold purple and blue now. Reaching out with his mind, Burr tries to contact the wizard. As his thoughts drift out, a bright flash and a sharp pain in his mind knock him back. The copper taste of blood in his mouth and the smell of burning leaves tell him he's sealed in this space. He tries to calm himself and try to cleanse whatever magical gunk remains on his essence. Trying 3 sigils and a few cantrip combinations revealed nothing abnormal with his being. Everything reads and feels as clean to him as when he reattunes his blade and armor after a battle with a malignant foe. Blah, blah, blah. His brow begins to feel heavy as the concentration for the 4th combination became hard to hold within and complete. He feels a stone sensation in the pit of his stomach. His mouth dries as his eyes begin to itch. His ears fill with water, and his blood becomes ice. He has found what is wrong. He is infected with an intelligent spell. This must be why the wizard brought him here. Containment and treatment. His mind tries to focus on the volumes of history for his position and what he might be able to recall from previous issues like this. The thorns inside his head hit sharper and harder, taunting him to move and stop his mantras and cease the cantrip. He begins to feel his feet being bitten and his bladder filling up with stones, the pain and discomfort making his eyes tear from pain and focus. In his mind, he finds the tome that references 2 events in the past that were not events, they're not events. 2 people in the past that were infected by malignant entities. They were both recorded as never returning to duty after being summoned to the wizard's keep. Burr feels there is something false about the memory of text. He refocuses to recall the book again. It changes from never returning to work again to being reassigned to a new task. Neither sounded good. The life he lived was all he wanted and all he really knew. There was nothing else he cared enough about to pursue. He was not interested in owning land, having a family, being social daily or weekly as others did. Even romantic encounters were fine to just be casual. This life was perfect for him. Working alone and spending time doing what pleased him when not fighting the darkness that lingered in the lands unprotected by wizards and elder gods. What new task could be fulfilled if he was marked by a spell that could think? He recalled reading about spells that could think. They were homunculuses. They were... This is why we're here. They were homunculuses of the caster, smaller, less intelligent, and not nearly as powerful, but quite effective, focused on nothing but the singular task they were sent for, be it death, spying, corruption, or any number of things the deranged minds of the necromancers and mages of decay and ruin. The coin was obviously the carrier. The damage to his gauntlet now made sense. The spell forced its way through the protections, breaking the physical and magical aspects of the gauntlet as it burrowed deep within him. But what was it supposed to do? He understood these things would turn normal people into weapons, turn people into portals, or break the body down to spread a virus or blight corpses, or blight crops, not corpses. I wrote crops, but this is why we're here, right? This is why you're joining me for this cold reading. Also to just hear my cute voice. All right. Where was I? Or blight crops. This one was in his mind and hiding for what reason? The wizard obviously knew what was going on. They had to have guessed at the least, he thought. The pain became overwhelming as he reached this understanding. Even with his eyes closed, flashes of light and color swirled in his vision. The smell and taste of copper and bile started him dry heaving. Before he isolated his mind and left his body to its torment, his essence floating just above his body was unable to move as it had before. There was a dark thread holding his essence to his body. He thought to himself that the spell must be working so hard on the body it needed to remain connected to his essence in this way. It would only be a matter of time before even this intangible form would begin to feel pain. He decided it was time to put his body and mind into a stasis. There was nothing else he could think of doing. Perhaps the wizard was hoping he would do something to contain the malignancy. He put his trust blindly in the wizard and in the wizards, and this wizard specifically. It had been years protecting people using the tools that the wizard made. There was no reason to fear, he thought. He began to wonder why that was even a thought, though. Did the spell have that subtle of an effect on his mind to manipulate his thinking with that delicate of a touch? The uncertain feeling about going into stasis had to be discarded. He must close down entirely. His resolve now certain, he re-enters his body, drawing the sigil of hibernation and the sigil of containment in his mind. The spell, amplifying the pain, the doubt, and the fear. Burr nearly cries out, breaking his concentration and focus. His fingertips feel nails entering the tip and thin cuts. His fingertips feel nails entering. Okay, he's digging his nails into his body. Okay. Then there are cuts on the bottom of his feet, and he feels lime juice. I don't know. This is a confusing sentence. I was probably like, this is a good idea at the time. A small shard of doubt enters the edge of his mind as the sigils set themselves and activate. Burr goes still as his body turns into a crystal. After his body cools, the entryways and light return to normal. Goblins and the half-orcs enter with magical items of light and smoke to cleanse the space. Burr's body is laid upon a thick green slab of jade on the table in the center. When the light of the lamps the goblins are holding turn from pale light to bright white, they depart. After a moment or two, the wizard appears in a swirl of sweet smoke. "Oh, you poor boy," they say, looking over the body of crystal. "Steve," they shout. Steve's chattering insists that he has been right here and not to yell. The wizard huffs before holding out their hand with expectation. Steve places an obsidian cube in their hand and steps back, signaling the other goblins and orcs to do the same. Raising their hand up, the wizard begins to recite a spell made up of sounds unknown to language and words unknown to most mortals. The goblins hold down their ears as the half-orcs wrap towels around each other's heads to soften the power of the spell from giving them a headache. A swirl of white vapor surrounds the wizard's hands as they clasp together with the cube held between them. Slowly, as the pattern of sounds and words become layers of new sounds and words, new colors of vapor join the white, creating a rainbow swirl. The wizard gets louder with each layer of sound, and alien words get louder. The air fills with symbols and sigils of no color, making the space they occupy to be absent. The wizard begins to glow from the inside, just before slamming their hands down upon Burr's crystal head. A burst of sound and color fills the room with a flash, rocking everyone back with just the wizard standing over Burr. Folding legs in the air, the wizard floats above the crystal body. "All of you know your jobs," they say before closing their eyes. The landscape Burr finds himself in is unlike anything he has ever seen or read about. The ground is crystal but soft. The air is solid, but it feels like a breeze. The sky has no light shining, but still it's bright. His body is two-dimensional, but he can see around himself in the landscape. His mind, vision, and sensation all argue with what he's experiencing. Even moving is a contradiction. He can't decide if he is moving or if it's the world around him that is moving. The landscape changes as if he is moving, but doesn't feel his body shift at all. Even when he looks around the environment and his own body, there's no sense of movement within him. He then notices that his thoughts are different. They're not the same internal dialogue he would have. They speak like a coiled sound pouring out of a horse. He notices the thoughts he is actively having pour out in front of him, causing the same words and thoughts to repeat as he thinks the things he sees in front of him. He tries to close his eyes, but feels no eyelids. But now can't see the world, but still can perceive his thoughts. The closed loop, he thinks. This is a closed loop, and I will never escape thinking the things I am thinking over and over, as I will always see the thoughts I have, and I will never escape thinking the things I am thinking over and over, as I will always see the thought. "That's enough, young man," a sour voice washes over Burr. "Look at me, meat puppet." Willing himself to see the world again, Burr sees a corrupt version of himself in front of himself and behind himself. The smile and frown it has makes Burr feel sick and dizzy. Thoughts and words pour out of the creatures in ripples like water and a line like a train. "I can't believe you managed to trap us in this form. Do you understand how frustrating it is to be aware of yourself in this place? You can never sleep, so I have to deal with this conflicting perception and you until I can figure out how to wake you the fuck up." Burr smiles and cries. "Well, this is forever. We're going to be here until you lose energy or my essence fades. So eat dicks, you parasite." Burr wonders where the language he is using came from until he looks at the thing in front of him, and the thoughts and words of hate and insult ooze from it at a steady pace. I will never lose energy, you prick. It then thinks that of course it will fade when Burr does, and notices Burr seeing this thought. Don't get any ideas. I'll win. My creator has been trying for decades to get this far. I have some tricks that bitch wizard has never seen before. That's so. Wrapped in obsidian and a cohesive form, perfectly, the wizard... Okay, I'm confusing myself here. So it was the copy that called him a meat puppet, not the wizard. This is why I call these first drafts, because they're little mistakes like that. But smooth. You didn't see me just drop this. All right. Okay. So the wizard just shows up and says, "That's so." Wrapped in obsidian and in a cohesive form. Perfectly the wizard, not oozing thoughts or twisted by the perception of this realm. They look like a person walking among wall paintings. "How are you, young man?" they say, looking at Burr. "It's difficult to be aware right now. This creature is tied to my being so tightly it looks like me here. I'm sorry I brought this in your home." "Nonsense," the wizard pats their hands together, making a cloud of obsidian shards. "We'll get through this together. You trust me?" "No, he doesn't, you cow." Twisting and pulsing with new vigor, the vile entity says, "My master vowed to get revenge upon you. I will now enact his plan." "Well, telegraph your attack," the wizard says, laughing, then sends a cloud of obsidian to Burr. "Gain the form of self." The twisted form of Burr yells as it gets brighter and tries to leap up and run, while sliding in front of Burr to catch the cloud of obsidian. While sliding in front of Burr to catch the obsidian. Burr loses the ability to keep track of the layers of events before him. He sees the cloud in 10 places and is disoriented, and in his distorted shadow and even more. He sees the wizard as clear as the sun. He decides to focus on them and not panic. The twisted version of Burr catches the obsidian cloud in its chest and back. It begins to laugh and cry while cursing its failure and victory. It begins to yell and whisper as it slowly forms into a shape like the wizard, and its voice unifies into one normal speaking voice. "You failed, bitch." "I did?" they say as a large shard of obsidian falls upon Burr's head. His body screams and celebrates as it shakes and finds stillness. He twists as he stretches out, finding the peace and centered part of himself as he forms into a seated position, floating above the ground in the sky. "I believe I understand," he says. The intruder begins to shift its position as it throws a leg back into the chest of Burr and a fist into the wizard. Both of them flip back, landing on their feet, taking a battle pose. The creature snarls, growing twice its size, forming large claws on its hands. It leaps at the wizard with an arm raised to crash down upon them, stopping the arm by holding up their hands. They look behind the creature, seeing Burr rush the monster's legs, sweeping them to the side. Burr and the wizard stand side by side as the monster gets up again, splitting itself into 2 versions. The split causing each version to look as if they are webbed glass moving rapidly and furiously. The wizard laughs as they create a sword from their hand, starting to chip the beast. Create a sword from their hand and starts to chip the beast. Burr puts bucklers on each of his forearms, using them to block and strike sharp blows between each dodge swing the creature takes. The beasts crash together to reform into one large one for ground strike before splitting again, knocking the defenders down into rolls. They both get up blocking attacks before using their other arms to strike a solid blow. The beast yells and spits red-tinted obsidian from each of its mouths. Splitting again, making 4 webbed obsidian beasts, starts attacking again. All four dive to attack the wizard this time. I could have written that better. Rolling down into a ball, the wizard grows long blades from their back as the beasts try to slam their large claws down. Two of the beasts lose a hand, reforming together to make one beast, missing a hand. The other two continue to press on the wizard as they get up, swashbuckling their way around the beasts. Burr focuses on the damaged arm of the beast attacking, slowly, chipping more of the arm off. He notices each of the beasts are now attacking as feral dogs or injured boar, as a feral dog or an injured boar would attack. Furiously and without focus, Burr yells out, "Wild animal!" The wizard nods. They begin to poke at the beast, pushing it backwards, making it protect itself. Burr does the same. They direct each beast to the same spot, the creatures swiping the air, trying to find a way to attack. The backs of the beasts tap, then suddenly becoming one again. Screaming, it forms back into the distorted shape of Burr. "How are you doing this?" it snarls. "I pick my champions well," the wizard says. "It may take another 100 years, but my master will kill you and take your mantle." Parts of the thing begin to crumble. Burr looks at the wizard. "Do you know who he's talking about?" Shrugging, the wizard says, "Who knows? It might be an ex-lover that got angry when I dumped him." The wizard taps the top of the creature's flaking head. "How about it? Is this some kind of jilted lover thing? That would be really boring." Crumbling faster, the creature says, "Boring? Why, you narcissistic, selfish, heartless cow." Rolling their eyes, the wizard brings the bladed arm down sharply, shattering the creature. How tedious. It would have been more satisfying if it were someone just wanting power. "Really?" Burr says, not believing them. "Yeah, this is like the 5th time someone I dated couldn't deal." They reformed their body into normal shape. You can't know how hard it is to find someone that is not insane. "I wouldn't know," Burr says. "Long-term relationships are not my thing." "Well, look at that. A guy that isn't trying to fuck me. You are really hot, but, you're not my type." Laughing, the wizard puts their hand on Burr's shoulder. "You are so very refreshing. Let's get back to the world." Moments later, they are standing over a hollow crystal shell in the shape of Burr. The wizard makes it vanish and calls the staff to prepare a lavish dinner for all of them to enjoy. "Well, now that you've been through that, do you want to retire?" the wizard asks. Sitting down, thanking Steve for bringing a large flagon of ale. "Retire? Fuck that. This is the most fun I've had in years." The wizard laughs. "Same here, my friend. Same here." There you go. I mean, I really like this story. It could be more cohesive. I should come back to it and tighten it up, because there's a good idea in there. It's that one of the things about this being a flash fiction, just writing off the top of my head and then cold reading it, is, I have gotten better as a writer, but it does show just how easy it is to miss basic things when you're writing. That's why, you go back and you revise, and then you go back and you revise, and then you go back and you revise. It's such a tedious process sometimes. And, I've worked on stories to that point, a lot of them actually. But this project is more, entertain me, entertain you, maybe you'll get inspired by some of these ideas. Maybe you'll do a show like this of your own, because everybody has a unique voice, a unique writing style. I'm just doing batshit crazy stuff that has LGBTQIA characters, because, your space cat is trans, and also I guess you would call me pansexual. I don't like that term because it's like I don't know, and omnisexual just doesn't sound right either. I just think humans are freaking sexy. I mean, they are. humans are sexy. Like, damn, you know? It's just damn. Some humans, yeah. Mm. You know, maybe I should have a coffee mug that doesn't have green on it. Anyways, you know, thanks for coming to listen. Remember to like and subscribe. You can visit me, nailsthatglow.com. YouTube channel is at firstdraftsthatglow. Email firstdraftsthatglow@gmail.com. You know, just, you know, be lovely, lovely people out there. You know, the world's going a bit kooky, so let's all have some fun, and let's all, you know, just support each other and be there for each other, because why not? And, you know, I'm not sure if you know this, but you, right there, you're pretty hot. Also, you're not alone. None of us are alone. But also, you're hot. Everybody is sexy. Seriously, everybody is sexy. I'm not even kidding. If you knew how much photo editing went into some of these, like, influencer accounts, you would just be like, oh damn, that bee has a saggy bottom, but every time she posts it looks like a fat ass. Or they just, you know, had like money from, you know, their dad's emerald mine and wasted 40 some odd $billion on a social networking site to, you know, compensate for their, like, you know, insecurities. Anyways, next week, you know, I completely forgot to look it up again this time because I am a genius, and I knew that I needed to know next week's story name. Let's see, what are we on? We're on Shallow Reasons. Next week is going to be, and this one's pretty cool. It's called Budget Syrup. This is what you get when you choose random words to write stories. Anyways, thanks again for joining me for First Drafts That Glow. I've been Avon, and I love you.